Hello, and welcome to On the Turf, hosted by two guys who have never been on the turf. My name is Rohan Patel.
I'm Sri Balmkanda.
And unfortunately, Arjun couldn't make it today. He was reeling off of the Packers' loss to the Lions and the true fall of Aaron Rodgers. So he's taking a week off to recover. I think he might need another week off after next week when the Steelers lose once again and Kenny Pickett throws 3 more picks. But you might need a week off too, Shri. But this week, you got me and Shri coming to you. We're going to be doing a quick recap of games from last week. We'll do a quick preview of some games in the upcoming week, and then we'll also get into midseason awards and talk a little bit about what our predictions are there. So, Shri, what do you have for us? How are you feeling about last week of football?
Last week of football was pretty amazing. I got to say, we had some teams on bye, but, the games did not disappoint whatsoever. I'm very excited to talk about a couple of games. I thought, we saw a lot of teams, improve. We saw some teams, just completely just fail. But I think, this week, was a really good litmus test for a lot of teams, and give a projection for the rest of the season. So I think it was a great week, and I'm excited to talk about the games we have.
All right, well, let's dive into our first game. It was in the early window on Sunday, one of the best games of the week, really. The Bills and the Jets. The Jets upset Buffalo 20-17 in New York. Really, really great game. Uncharacteristically bad game from Josh Allen. He had 2 picks, but he did run 2 touchdowns on the ground. Sauce Gardner, the front runner for Defensive Rookie of the Year, had an interception. Offensively, Zach Wilson, not great, but he got the job done through a touchdown pass to James Robinson. Michael Carter runs one in 2. I mean, the Jets didn't look great last week against New England. They come out this week. Defense looks amazing. They shut down the Bills. What do you make of this, Shri? I mean, is this Jets team for real, and does Buffalo need to worry?
Yeah, I mean, coming into this game, I feel like we all thought that, if there was, a Super Bowl, contender or favorite, it was the Buffalo Bills. This team is just star-studded all around. Offense, defense, so efficient, just so, playmaking heavy. They're just a great team overall. The Jets, they had a couple wins here and there. They beat the Steelers. They lost to the Patriots, so we all thought that they were pretenders. But they come out here and, offensively, they're able to hold it off, but defensively, they come up big against one of the best offenses. And that Bills run defense is really starting to make me worry because they looked horrible for the past 2 weeks. And I feel like that is their Achilles heel if there's any weakness to this team. If they don't get that figured out, that could be a real problem for them because a lot of these teams, I feel like around the NFL are trying to adopt that run heavy kind of attack. So if they don't get that figured out, it could be a worry for them.
Yeah, I mean, and their secondary didn't look great either. Granted, they had a few key pieces out. Obviously, Micah Hyde's out for the year. Trey White is still out. I think Jordan Poyer was out for this game too. And that led to Ricky Garrett-Wilson having a pretty solid day. And this Jets offense will just get better. They're missing Corey Davis right now, one of their veteran wide receivers, who's a really good target for Zach Wilson. So, I don't know. This Jets team could make some noise in the East. But I think they would make more noise if it wasn't for the next NFC East team that we're talking about, and that's the Miami Dolphins. I mean, the Dolphins' offense looked tremendous this past week, beating the Bears 35-32. Obviously not the best defensive performance you want to see. We'll talk about the Bears and Justin Fields a bit later. But first thing I want to talk about is this Dolphins offense. Is there any stopping Tua, Jalen Waddle, and Tyreek Hill?
When you think of an NFL, when you think of as a defense, how are you going to, stop this opposing offense you have coming onto you? You think of, trying to lock down the best receiver, but you don't have a best receiver to this Dolphins team. I'm sure Tyreek Hill is so much better than Jalen Waddle, and he is the main guy in Miami. But when you have 2, I think right now Jalen Waddle is playing like a top 10 receiver. And when you have 2 of them on the field, it's impossible for you to delegate that secondary to, target one player or another. And, I feel like Tua, even if that doesn't work, and he has been underthrowing the ball sometimes, but he's been balling out. I feel like he silenced the haters. I feel like really we need to talk about a debate versus Tua and Justin Herbert. I think it's time to consider with Tua who has weapons, he's performing this much, and I'm sure Justin Herbert does not have the weapons right now with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen out. But Justin Herbert last year with weapons versus Tua Tagovailoa this year with weapons, That's a good debate to have, honestly. So I'm excited for this Miami Dolphins. And honestly, that Bears offense, we can talk about that later, but you go ahead, Rohan.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I never thought of the comparison. That's a
Yeah,
really good comparison to make because everyone's been saying Justin Herbert was the better QB in that class, but you make a good point. I
yeah.
mean, granted, Tua might have better coaching right now, but
That's true,
he's
yeah.
been amazing this year. Any game that he starts and finishes, they've won. They're 6-0 in games that he actually plays in, which is incredible.
That's
I
insane,
mean,
yeah.
this past week, near perfect. He didn't throw a pick. He was 21 for 30, over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Hits Tyreek and Jalen Waddle on for touchdowns as well. I mean, it's hard to stop this team. But on the other end, Chicago didn't look too bad. I mean, this was a team that we thought was in the depths of darkness just a few weeks ago. But again, this is a loss, but they're showing signs of life. Justin Fields broke the NFL single-season rushing record for a QB with 178 yards rushing.
That's insane.
Most of those on a single touchdown run for 60 yards. He threw 3 touchdowns through the air. Darnell Mooney finally caught his first touchdown, so fantasy owners can rejoice. But I mean, for an offense that we thought was going to be really, really run-heavy and depend on the running backs, Justin Fields is starting to come into his own a little bit, even with really, really like low tier weapons. I think.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I feel like even if, like, for all Chicago fans out there, like, even if, you lost against one of the best teams in the NFL, you have something to be proud about. You have something to, go out there and support your team for, like, the next week. It's not completely hopeless. I feel like Chicago has found their franchise quarterback. Justin Fields is making plays. Like, remember, this is the quarterback that had the lowest passer rating in the NFL over the first 4 to 5 weeks. Now he's turning it up, like, on the ground and through the air. I mean, fantasy owners last week, 42 points from Justin Fields. I mean, come on now. I think Chicago should be happy. I think that they have something to look forward to in the future years, and they also do have some draft capital after trading Roquan Smith. And that's another thing that I wanted to talk about. That trade to the Ravens. I feel like Baltimore still hasn't paid Lamar, and now they have to pay this all-pro linebacker. Like, what is Baltimore supposed to do at this point? But
I don't know. That's kind of touch for another day. But I mean, that trade deadline was crazy. The Roquan pickup was good, I think, for the Ravens. But another pickup the Steelers got, Chase Claypool. I mean, he didn't make much of an impact this week, but I think having another top-tier wide receiver on the field is going to be really good for Fields going forward. And honestly, with a really weak NFC, the Bears are not completely out of contention for that last wild card spot, maybe. But let's get into 2 other NFC teams. I really want to talk about this one, Shree.
I think this is a great game to talk about. Honestly, I think this is a perfect way for us to gauge how great teams are, and that's the Cardinals versus the Seahawks game. Rohan, I must say that I feel like it's very frustrating for any Cardinals fan to have such an incompetent head coach, but. And I understand that I have the Seahawks in the top 10, but losing a divisional game at this stage, a must-win game with DeAndre Hopkins back, with Kyler Murray, being completely comfortable within this offense. I mean, I'm just gonna let you. I'm gonna be quiet. I'm gonna let you have this one.
I don't know where to start. I mean, I've ranted about Cliff Kingsbury enough times, but this is this is a very talented roster. You have a top 10 quarterback, you got a top 5 wide receiver. Offensive line, sure, struggling a bit, but think about how much you invested into this offense. You traded picks for Marquise Brown, you traded picks for Robbie Anderson, you re-signed James Conner. You do so much, and you still can't find ways to maximize your team. And it's just frustrating. Like, Cliff Kingsbury calls plays that aren't conducive to Kyler's playing style. He puts him in a pocket passer sense. And then I look on the other side to see the Seahawks. They do rollouts with Geno Smith. They ran like bootlegs off of play action. It was beautiful to watch if it was my team. And I wonder why we didn't do the same thing. It's really aggravating. Our defense was not good at all. I mean, Kenneth Walker ran all over us. Geno Smith, outside of that one pick, had another fantastic game. The Seahawks might be legit. I think they'll face some strong competition in the NFC West with the Rams and Niners. Cardinals don't look good. I mean, I think this game, it's important because of the Seahawks at this point. Like, I love the Cardinals, but this game, the Cardinals are I think, teetering on the edge of irrelevance.
Damn.
And this game might have pushed them over the edge.
I'm sure Arjun would have liked to be here for this one. But yeah, I feel like the Cardinals, the success is just a product of coaching, and it's just, the run defense, in my opinion. I think that secondary can hold it. I think Byron Murphy is probably one of the best corners in the league.
He is. Yeah.
And I feel like that secondary can, even if that secondary isn't performing at its best, that run defense has to be solid. And everyone's been running over them. And offensively, if that play calling isn't solid, you can't use those playmakers. And obviously, Robbie Anderson, he's been he's been on the Cardinals for 3 weeks. He's caught, I think, like 3 passes for like negative.
No. He's caught 1 pass for negative 4 yards. Okay, that's all he's done. It's terrible. I'm like, part of me is like, is Robbie Anderson not good? But part of me also is like, why? Like, how do you not incorporate your new weapon into your offense, especially after you just lost Marquise Brown?
Yeah.
You got him. You got the remnants of AJ Green. You got DeAndre freaking Hopkins. You got Zach Ertz too. It doesn't make sense. Like, even if you have a weak offensive line with all of these weapons, you have to be able to scheme these guys open, and they're not doing it. It's just so frustrating.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm not talking about this anymore. We're moving on to our last game. Sunday Night Football, another really, really great game. Chiefs-Titans. This game goes to overtime. Chiefs win 20-17. Mahomes throws for over 400 yards. Derrick Henry, huge game on the ground, as Malik Willis had another game where he struggled. Now, I think this game, I'm not going to talk too much about Malik Willis here. I think that he was dealt a pretty bad hand. Not many great receivers in his offense. Thrust him to playing one of the a top 3 team in the league. He did what he was supposed to do as a game manager and let Derrick Henry, I think, carry the brunt of this offense. But on the Chiefs' end, I mean, it's a good win. You obviously come up with a win. You're happy with that. Kelsey, Juju Smith-Schuster got really involved with the offense. That all looks great. But are you a bit worried that the Titans took you to overtime? Like, are you a bit worried that Derrick Henry did have his way with you for much of the game? That you needed Patrick Mahomes to throw 68 passes and a come from behind victory?
Oh, jeez.
Like, is that a worrying sign for the Chiefs that maybe their offense isn't quite so unstoppable?
I think like more than just the Chiefs, I feel like this Titans secondary, like, it needs to be applauded for whatever they did. Against the Chiefs, which, in my opinion, probably the best passing attack in the league, being able to contain them and, like, forcing it to overtime when you know for a fact that your offense is going to be the best it can be. I feel like that Titans secondary just was amazing. And I feel like Titans fans have, they have so much hope. I feel like they're going to win the division. They could go far into, the playoffs, but that's for another time. But for the Chiefs, I think that, the passing game has been effective. There's a reason why you've thrown for over 460 yards, but you have to be efficient in the red zone. Like, you haven't done anything. You've got it going, but that run game needs to be incorporated better. I don't think I should be that worried because the Titans secondary is just been playing out of its mind right now throughout the season. But I come back. I just sit back. Just go week by week. But I don't know. I actually, I would be worried if I were the Chiefs.
I think so. When you look at both these offenses, I think they're both very, very one-dimensional offenses. At least that's what it seemed like last week. The Titans are completely reliant on Derrick Henry. Maybe a bit less so when Ryan Tannehill comes back, but this is still Derrick Henry's team. As for the Chiefs, I'm looking at the stats right now. Let's see. Their backfield combined for 9, 12, 13 carries. Guess how many yards they got, Shree?
When you think of 13 carries, you usually think around, like, I don't know, 60 yards? 50 yards?
14 yards.
Oh!
13 carries for 14 yards. Their leading rusher was Patrick Mahomes, who had 63 yards on the ground himself.
So, we had an amazing week 9, but, like, let's talk about week 10. We have some, I feel like overall not the greatest matchups, but we have 2 key games going into week 10. And the first one, in my opinion, is probably going to be the best game of the week by far. It's the Minnesota Vikings going to the Buffalo Bills. What do you think of this, Rohan? I'm pretty excited as a Vikings fan. We're 7-1. The Bills are 6-2. We have the better record. We have the momentum. Kirk Cousins is dancing with all those chains with that 8-pack.
I was surprised. I was surprised he was ripped. I thought he had like a low-key like a dad bod, but bro was actually
yoked. He is young.
He is ripped. He's shredded.
I did not expect that either. But most likely we'll probably be seeing that again, right? The Buffalo Bills don't have Josh Allen, but what do you think?
Well, yeah, I think that's another big point. We didn't mention this earlier, but Josh Allen, I mean, the elbow injury, we don't know the extent of it right now. They're saying it's a UCL injury. Uh, could keep him out of the Minnesota game. Could keep him out for a lot longer. So that's something to keep an eye out for. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, this game might just boil down to if Josh Allen plays or not. I think if Josh Allen plays, this is a good bounce back game for them. They're back at home. They're playing a Minnesota Vikings team that has been relatively untested this year, I think. And this could be a great statement win for them. If Josh Allen is out, I think the Vikings offense or Vikings defense will have a lot easier of a time handling the Bills offense with Case Keenum under center. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the Vikings offense plays out against a better defense. I mean, all the weapons are there. I really want to see what Kirk Cousins can do with this now. Does he fare well against like high-end opponents? I think this is going to be a really good litmus test for both teams to see how they fare against other top teams. And I mean, come playoff time, that's what's important.
Yeah, listen, if Josh Allen isn't playing and the Vikings lose, I think we can all agree that they're pretenders, right? I mean, they've had probably one of the easiest schedules in the NFL. They've lost to the only team that they lost against had like an above 500 record, and that was Philadelphia Eagles in Week 2.
Yeah.
And if they lose to the Buffalo Bills without Josh Allen, I haven't really been high on the Vikings just because of the opponents that they've had. They've had to come back from Washington last week. But, if they get it done, if they're doing it convincingly, then yeah, I think it's time to put the Vikings in the top 5 conversation, like finally, right? But if Josh Allen's there, it's at home in Buffalo. They just took a big L to the Jets. I'm taking Buffalo for sure. But, Josh Allen is the X factor there. I don't know what Case Keenum is going to do, but maybe those Bills receivers will like ball out or something. But we'll just have to wait and see on Josh Allen.
I mean, here's the thing, though. It's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know why you're not higher on the Vikings tree. I'm pretty high on them. I mean, yeah, you can say they had an easy schedule, and this is a good litmus test, but I mean, good teams beat bad teams, and the Vikings have been doing that relatively consistently, which is something we haven't seen from them in so many years. This is a historically inconsistent team. I think, yes, like, they're easy teams, but I also find it just as impressive that this Vikings team, is beating the teams they're supposed to beat. Going 7-1 in the NFL isn't an easy thing to do, and I think it's impressive the Vikings are doing it.
I'm happy that they're doing well. I'm like, the reason why I'm not as high on them is that they've had to come back from behind. These haven't been, those easy wins. And like last year, for example, like almost like I think 7 of their games came in like were all 1-score games that were decided. This year, they're able to exact same situation, but they've just been successful. So it's just a matter of like the last 4 minutes of the fourth quarter just deciding their games. Like last week against Washington, they were down 17-9 for like up until the fourth quarter, until Kirk Cousins, threw to Justin Jefferson and they did it, and then an interception helped them. But I'm just not convinced, Rohan. Like these if they're, I mean, they beat bad teams, but they just got to be solid wins. But I'm glad that they're doing well. I'll just say that.
All right, well, let's move on to our other game. It's a Sunday night football game for next week. It's a California matchup. You got the Chargers heading to San Francisco to take on the new-look 49ers. I mean, first thing I want to talk about here, we haven't released an episode in a while, so we haven't hit on the trade deadline too much, but the biggest trade, I think, of the deadline, Christian McCaffrey to the Niners. They gave a lot of draft capital for him. Whether that's the right decision or not, we're not going to be able to tell. But as of now, it's looking good. I mean, in his last game with the Niners, McCaffrey got that hat trick. He threw for a touchdown, rushed for a touchdown, and received a touchdown in one game. An incredible performance from him. I'm really looking forward to seeing how what's his name? Kyle Shanahan implements McCaffrey in that Niners offense. There's so many weapons there. It'll be a really, really, really fun offense. But yeah, so they go off their bye week, taking on a relatively banged-up Chargers team. They've had injuries on the defensive end. Mike Williams will be out. Keenan Allen, status up in the air, but I think he's trending out with the way things have been going recently. I don't know. I think this is a tough one for the Chargers. They just came off a very, very close win to the Falcons. I think the talent, once healthy, puts the Chargers in that top 10 conversation in the NFL, but right now, I don't know if they can beat a team like the Niners that are starting to hit their stride.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like the Niners are basically Super Bowl contenders at this point. They're if I think of the top three teams in the NFC, I think of number one the Eagles, and I think the Vikings and the 49ers, and those three teams as like the top of the NFC. And any of these teams I see can make the Super Bowl from the NFC. I just want to say though, if Jimmy G is not is not having success with this team, and like he finds a starting job next year, he will be the luckiest man on the face of the earth. Like this man has the best cast around him. He has an insanely like talented offensive line, the best possible weapons. Like, you have Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and CMC. Like that is just, oh my god! If
and a great offensive line too. Let's not forget that.
Exactly, and the run game, Kyle Shanahan will just like handle it. Like he's stacked. Everything's stacked all around him. I'm praying for Jimmy G just for it to like. He can't mess this up. Like I hope he messes it up against the Vikings, but he just can't mess this up. Am I the only one that thinks that, or does this feel?
No, I 100% agree. I think these are the type of games against like mid-tier or good teams like the Chargers. These are the kind of games that the Niners have to start consistently winning if they're going to be in that Super Bowl conversation. They have the talent. The question is, if it comes down to the wire, can Jimmy Garoppolo lead you to a victory? Now, I'm not saying that this game will come down to the wire, but this is one of those games where it's like, this is a team that the Niners should beat, but there's also like a very, very, I can like conceive of many different ways that the Niners managed to lose this game.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, this is a matchup where it's not Jimmy Garoppolo against Justin Herbert. It's a matter of like, can Jimmy Garoppolo lead all of his weapons and just do enough to win this game?
Yeah.
I think he will. I think that, again, this Charger team is a bit too banged up for me to pick them, but it's not a game that's going to make me completely sold on the Niners until I see more of them and I see them performing consistently with Jimmy Garoppolo under center.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, but let's get into our last section of the week. It's a bit past midseason, but we're going to be doing... Actually, no, it's just midseason. We finished week 9. We have 18 weeks now with the new schedule in place. So let's get into midseason awards. So what we'll be doing here, me and Shree will both be giving our picks for who we think will win each major award. It's pretty straightforward. Some of these picks are probably the odds-on favorite. Some of these are a bit outlandish, so wouldn't recommend betting on these. But let's get into it, starting with the rookies. We'll work our way up. First thing, let's start with Offensive Rookie of the Year. Shree, how would you give your pick first?
All right, so like I'm, if people watching this, I'm completely like I am focused, like I am making this with a complete, rational thought. Okay, and I'm picking Chris Olave for my Offensive Rookie of the Year. Like, let me tell you why. And I understand, the Saints are not performing well, and I understand that, when you think of offensive rookies, you think of someone that's performing, out of their mind as a rookie. But, and I know, like, Justin Jefferson, who was the wide receiver who did not win Offensive Rookie of the Year, and Chris Olave is nowhere near him. But the reason why is just because when you think of Offensive Rookie of the Year, I'm thinking of someone who that like whatever team they're on is consistently relied upon. This is a type of person that just has the stats to back it up, can work with any kind of environment. And Chris Olave has been bouncing between multiple different quarterbacks, and he's still produced. I think he's having I don't know how many yards he's at, but he's at like a top 15, top 20 in terms of just like statistics wise against all other receivers that are just not rookies. And when I think of other potential Offensive Rookie of the Year candidates, I'm looking at running backs who have entered like mid-season or who have come in injured. So at that point, I just feel like I have to defer to Chris Olave, and the only thing that's really holding him back is the Saints just not performing well. So my pick is Chris Olave.
That's an interesting pick. Like, I like the idea of it. I just think that at the end of the day, like, the stats are needed.
Yeah.
Maybe he has like a second half spurt, and that's a reasonable pick to say that if he does perform better in the second half, he may be able to get that award. I think the talent is there, though. I think you are right with the talent. It's just he's shown a lot of flashes. I think that he's going to be a very good wide receiver in the NFL. but I think his quarterback play is really holding him back. But I'm going to go with the much safer pick. I think it's the odds-on favorite right now.
Yeah.
First of all, shout out to Dameon Pierce. I mean, he's having a great year. Unfortunately, he plays for the Texans, and no one cares about them. That's why I'm going with Kenneth Walker. I mean, like I said, ran over my Cardinals this week. I think he ran for over 130 yards, and 3 of his last 4 games, he's had over 100 yards. He is this workhorse back in the Seahawks offense. He's been extremely involved in the passing game, especially after Rashad Penny's injury. And I mean, I think it counts for even more when the Seahawks are in the playoff picture and at this rate look like they'll get the NFC West crown, or they'll at least end up in a wild card spot. And I think a lot of that is thanks to Kenneth Walker. And if they do make the playoffs, I think he's kind of a shoo-in for Offensive Rookie of the Year. But that is, of course, barring anything else happening, barring injury, which knocked out my favorite player for Offensive Rookie of the Year, Breece Hall, who unfortunately tore his ACL a few weeks ago. But I think Breece Hall was a clear candidate for Offensive Rookie of the Year until his injury, which now I think makes the race a bit more open.
Yeah.
But that leads me back into the next Rookie of the Year award, which is Defensive Rookie of the Year. I feel like we're going to be agreeing a bit here, Shree. I think it's pretty obvious. I'm going with Sauce Gardner.
Sauce Gardner. Yeah, completely agree.
He's acting like a top 5 corner. He leads the league in passes defensed. He has 2 picks on the year now. And that's because teams don't test him. They're already acting like he's on an island. No one wants to test him. And I think that just goes to show how good he's been.
Yeah, completely agree. I feel like, he did get cooked by Diggs. I will point that out just because we have to point,
It's Diggs. It's Stephon Diggs.
It's Stephon Diggs. He's playing like the best receiver in the league right now, in my opinion. This year, he's playing like the best receiver, Stephon Diggs. And I think Sauce Gardner, he in my opinion, I think he's playing like a top 3 cornerback in the NFL this year. And I feel like there are 2 cornerbacks that you put above him. That's Patrick Surtain. And I feel like the young corners are just playing amazing this year, And then I think something like Darius Slay, James Bradbury, one of those 2 can, come in at 2 or 3.
James Bradbury.
Yeah, he's been playing pretty well.
Okay.
But I feel like there's not really competition for Sauce, for this award. So I feel like you just have to defer to him. He's playing out of his mind. I might pick Sauce Gardner.
Okay. All right, so now we got rookies out of the way. Let's go on to the grown-ups. We'll start with Offensive Player of the Year now. Shrew, what's your pick here?
So I know for a fact that I'm not going to get shade for this. I feel like if anything, Jalen Hurts is my pick for an Offensive Player of the Year. The reason why is just because I feel like Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen are just, better players in terms of elevating their team to a better level. And I feel like just because the Eagles have so many ways to win, and Jalen Hurts is just one part of that, and I feel like I'm just going to give him Offensive Player of the Year. I feel like there isn't really too many people that you can give Offensive Player of the Year to. And I feel like Jalen Hurts, with the record that he's had, with the success that his team has, with how he's complimenting his team, I'm going to give it to Jalen Hurts.
I mean, it's like a good pick. I think he's one of the betting favorites right now. I just hate when quarterbacks win Offensive Player of the Year. I think it should be a award that goes to non-quarterbacks, since quarterbacks always win MVP anyways. But no, I think you're right. I mean, like I said, Jalen Hurts having a great season. He really is an all-around offensive player too, on the ground and through the air. So I think that's a great pick. I'm going to go with someone who I think is working their way up that ladder, but is quite at the top yet. That's Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
Hear me out. Tyreek is on pace to set a single-season NFL record for passing yards, or receiving yards, sorry.
That's crazy.
I mean, yeah, he's on track for well over 2,000 yards. He's already over 1,100 yards 9 games into the season. I mean, this guy is consistently going for over 120 yards per game. And what's more is these are coming on a lot of receptions too. He's already got 76 receptions on the year, so he's on pace. I think he'll probably be on pace for around 150. I mean, it's hard to deny a 150 reception, over 2,000 yard season for Offensive Player of the Year, especially if the Dolphins end up with a good seed in the playoffs. The one issue, he's only caught 3 touchdowns so far this year. Maybe there will be some progression to the mean in terms of touchdowns, but even if there is none, I think the sheer volume that he's getting in Miami makes him a candidate, I think, for this award. But moving on to our Defensive Player of the Year, I think this is another one where we probably have some of the consensus.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to pick the obvious guy here. It's Micah Parsons. I mean, he's leading this Cowboys team is, I think, arguably a top 3, maybe even the best defense in the league, and Micah Parsons is the biggest reason for that. He's got 8 sacks on the year, but he's not just a pass rusher. I mean, he's back in coverage. He can cover the run very well. He's an all-around defensive player, really like a real Swiss Army knife. And because this Cowboys defense is so good,
yeah,
I think it's only fair to give him the award if he keeps up his play.
Yeah, completely agree.
Anything else from you, Sri, on that?
No, I don't think that there's anything else for me to say. I mean, I picked Michael Parsons as my defensive player of the year before the season started, and it was for a completely different reason, because I thought the Cowboys defense would be so like bad, but they would still have a good enough record that like Michael Parsons would be able to showcase his skills so well that people would just give him the defensive player of the year. But everything else was true, but it's just that the Cowboys defense has just been so well, and Micah Parsons, and they complimented Micah Parsons so well that Micah Parsons really has been playing out of his mind. I mean, he's top 3 in sacks. I think he probably has some of the most tackles in the league. So I think, Micah Parsons, defensive player of the year, and really there isn't that much competition for him. But Zadarius Smith from the Vikings, maybe. Mm-hmm.
So finally, on to the big award, most valuable player, MVP. I mean, typically this award goes to a big name quarterback, and I'm not going to veer away from that track record too much. This comes to a very big asterisk. My pick. Again, we said this player got injured just last week. Josh Allen suffered that elbow sprain. Now, if that injury turns out to not be too major, I think that he can win this award with a relative ease. He's been the front runner for a while. He had 2 rough games where he threw a few picks, which have put a bit of a dent into his resume. Nevertheless, he still gets work done on the ground if it's not through the air. If he's healthy, I think this Bills team is still the front runner to secure that number 1 seed in the AFC and get that bye. I think if you put all of that together, it's a pretty compelling argument for why Josh Allen should win, especially considering he's been hyped up to make that leap this year, and I think he's done a very good job of that. I'm going to give my honorable mention really quickly to Tua Tagovailoa. Yeah, I mean, like I said. When he's playing, this Dolphins team does not lose. I think his only issue is that he probably won't win the division because of the Bills. Yeah. And the other issue is that he did get injured for a bit, so his stats might not be. His stats already have. He's backtracked a bit with stats because he can't catch up to these other players. But at the end of the day, I think Josh Allen, he has the talent, he has that dual threat ability at quarterback, and I think he has the best team to lead him to the number 1 seed, which is important for an MVP.
Yeah, for sure. Completely valid pick. But, I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes on this one. Patrick Mahomes, we talked about this last week, but the guy has the most passing yards in the league. I think he has, the most passing touchdowns in the league. And he's second in QBR rating, right outside the Tua Tagovailoa. And when you think of, an MVP, and Josh Allen has had his, fair share of just, bad games, I feel like Patrick Mahomes hasn't had, that bad game for him to just drag him down the ladder. I think Josh Allen has had some of those bad games where, it's made you question, can he be the MVP candidate? But Patrick Mahomes, he's remained consistent. And even when he's not throwing 3 touchdowns in a game, he's throwing 460 yards passing. So I think, Patrick
Mahomes, a touchdown too last week.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes. Shout out to Tua. You deserve it if you were healthy, but you weren't, unfortunately. I hope you win, but you're probably not going to win. But I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes. And also because I think that the Vikings are actually going to beat the Bills next week. So the Bills actually have a worse record than Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, which I feel like will just help the Chiefs even more. And ultimately Patrick Mahomes for that MVP. So yeah, I'm taking Patrick Mahomes. That's my pick.
Interesting. I mean, the Bills did win the head-to-head against the Chiefs, but I do think you're right. I think if the Vikings can beat the Bills, and especially if Josh Allen is injured, Patrick Mahomes is the easy pick for MVP in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's all we have for you this week. Hopefully you survived this episode without Arjun. Personally, I think it was a lot more fun. Me and Shri have never done an episode alone together. I think it went pretty well. Shri, what do you think?
It went pretty good. This was really, really fun, honestly. We didn't have to listen to horrible takes from Arjun. I'm kidding.
I wasn't pissed off at all today. I didn't get angry at anything today. I fully talked about the Cardinals and I was calm and collected. I think Arjun just pisses me off. I think that's the issue.
Maybe.
Maybe we mutiny, Shri. Maybe we throw him off his own podcast.
Low key, yeah, that might be the move, but
could be the move. Who knows?
Who knows?
Anyways, we'll get back to you next week. Check out our Instagram, On the Turf Podcast. Hopefully you're watching this on YouTube, if not on Spotify. Follow us on all those platforms. Yeah, we'll see you next week. Keep watching football. And we'll have another episode for you in the coming weeks. So, with that, my name is Rohan Patel.
I'm Shri Balmkanda.
And thanks for watching On the Turf. I don't know who does this outro, but that's all I'm going to say.
We'll see you next week on the turf.
We'll see you next week on the turf. That's it.
Yeah, there we go.